But you made a very interesting point that there is a good cause for the World Health Organization to exist as a concept. But it is not, even at its absolute best, it is not some godly, supreme and perfect entity that always makes good decisions regarding health advice. And there have been many occasions in the WHO's history where it has given bad advice, particularly during the COVID era, but even before that. We even have incidences of the WHO engaging in criminal activity with some of its members, like some of its foreign aid people who are working there. So you note, for instance, that UNICEF's State of the World's Children report in 2023 has revealed that the COVID measures severely disrupted child welfare and set poor nations back a decade. Now, this doesn't sound like good governance, but the way the World Health Organization is evolving its power structures, there's very little recourse that ordinary citizens have against bad advice from the WHO.
Well, if the governments sign up to giving more powers and more resources and more binding powers to the WHO, there is very little that we can do. I think what we saw during COVID was the price we are now paying for putting careerist politicians in charge of our destiny. People with very little life experience outside of politics, and Albanese is a great example of that. But Scott Morrison did not distinguish himself in the way he coordinated our COVID response. We said we'll follow the science. Well, it was never a purely medical science decision as a policy decision. They needed to balance the resources and attention and priority being given to COVID against other big killer diseases. If we look at the 3-year period overall, I think COVID will rank well down the list of Australians' killer disease over the last 3 years in total. At any one time, it may have peaked, but it's not there. It was never the one killer disease, hardly in any country that I can think of, maybe in the top 3 at some brief period somewhere. So, and then on top of that, mental health implications, educational consequences of closing schools for long periods, unemployment consequences, the public debt, which is now fueling inflation all over the Western world. These are big issues. And what were the benefits from these? Why did the WHO abandon its own consensus document, which is published in September 2019, which argued against lockdown measures, argued against masks? Why did we not subject greater scrutiny to a new vaccine instead of just going all in for it? COVID was exceptional in that it was a very steep age-dependent gradient when the people in this 75 and up were 1,000 times more at risk than younger people in the 20s, say. And so we abandoned all the existing processes, and this insistence on conformity is deeply anti-scientific. Let me put it this way. If the WHO and the governments had at their disposal tools that were used in the last 3 years, we would still be believing in flat Earth, and we would be penalizing people like Galileo, because that is the dominant, we are the single source of truth. Anyone who's dissenting is a fringe voodoo scientist sort of attitude. In fact, you need to separate the fringe elements from responsible, well-qualified people who were raising alarm. This UNICEF report you mentioned, it said 67 million children have missed out on critical life-saving and life-altering immunization programs. So to say that those who objected to making COVID vaccines compulsory when it was under emergency use authorization, one of our arguments always was, you're going to promote vaccine hesitancy, you're going to promote public skepticism and distrust towards health institutions and health regulations. And this is what has happened. They lost out access to immunization programs because of the restrictions, and now there is more distrust of what these governments and the WHO are saying. So they are the ones responsible for spreading misinformation and disinformation and promoting vaccine hesitancy on those vaccines that most of us accept are actually very good, have undergone full safety trials, and benefit large numbers of children.